Can you believe it's almost opening day? John and I are so excited about that. And the question we're asking on today's show is, how did the WBC impact Ohtani and his desire to win a World Series with the Halos? He shared some thoughts, and we'll share what he said. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen every day. Every show's free and available on all platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can help us out by giving us a rate and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. If you've ever dreamed about becoming an MLB GM and managing your own baseball franchise, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebaseballgm.com or look it up in the App Store. And our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game.
Hey, thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, the last weekend of spring training games has come and gone. We've got two more against the Dodgers, and then it's on to Oakland for opening day, Shopening Day. So we're going to talk through some of the weekend games, talk through a little bit of roster talk and how the final 26-man roster is going to shake out. But to get us started, let's talk a little bit of Ohtani, speaking on his experience in the WBC and what that might mean for this season, Mike.
Yeah, he actually got to pitch in the WBC championship, and then his next start, John, was last Friday. He pitched a game against the Diamondbacks High A team. That must have been a wild experience to go from the WBC championship to strike out your teammate Mike Trout and to be jumping around covered in champagne and then being on a field with no crowd and nobody could get close to you, not even the media, because they were one field over, and having to pitch against a team that really didn't threaten him at all. He did go
Somebody got a home run off of him.
Well, 4 2/3. He did get a home run. He did give up a home run, but all indications are it was a wind-blown home run.
You know what, though? That guy is going to go back and tell his family and his friends. He's going to tell his ex-girlfriend, like, guess what I did? And look what you're missing out on. I hit a home run off Shohei Ohtani, and no one was there to see it.
Oh, I'm making an Instagram reel if I'm that guy, right? Like, I am totally just making sure everybody knows that. I'm getting a shirt that says, I hit a home run off of Ohtani. And then on the back, it'll say, and no one was there to experience it. Ohtani threw 81 pitches in that game. Again, his first action since the WBC. And it must have been really weird to go from that championship game to that game. He was asked by reporters about his WBC experience and his outlook and how it affected his outlook on free agency. And does it change anything? And so here's what he had to say. He said, not especially. First, I want to get to the World Series with the Angels and win. That reinforced those thoughts. That's what I'm thinking about. We have another week. I want to recover, and I want to approach the season in the best condition possible. John, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but reporters, when talking about Ohtani's quote, there's always confusion about exactly what he said. But did you notice that they left off get to the World Series with the Angels?
Of course
Almost
they did.
Every reporter said that.
Yeah.
And so I knew you'd be really frustrated with that. So if you need to just get some therapy and talk it through right now, John, we'd be happy to listen.
I think I had my share of rantings and ravings while you were gone because of all of the Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani talk in the WBC and trying to discredit those two for what they've accomplished in their careers. It's ridiculous. But shout out to Rhett Bollinger for being the one to actually report. He said that he wanted to go to the World Series with the Angels.
Yes. By the way, John, I got a text from our mutual friend, Keith, the Hammer. And he said, John needs you back on the show because he just went off on today's show. And I said, actually, that was my favorite moment on the show. So great job to you. Johnny, a focused Ohtani with a better team around him gets me really excited. And I've got some high hopes for this team. And I don't have high hopes alone. I know you do. But we don't have high hopes alone. In fact, some of the former major league pitchers that are on MLB Network and doing games are talking about the Angels like David Cohn. He was asked about the Angels' struggles to make the playoffs and fans joking about that. Here's what he said. The butt of the joke has been the Angels. They have Mike Trout. They have Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani did something last year that hasn't been done since Babe Ruth. Mike Trout has more WAR than Mickey Mantle at this age, and the Angels lose 10-2. He said that's been the joke for so long. How many times did we see that last year? And he says that joke gets really old with the Angels, and he was quoted as saying that the Angels are going to be better than people think, and he used the Philadelphia Phillies as the example, getting into the playoffs with 86 wins and how they really had a great run to the World Series. So, Johnny, it does sound like maybe the national media is starting to pay attention a little bit to what's happening in Anaheim. And by the way, we get Shohei all season long. He's not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so we get to have him on our team. But, John, do you think after watching Trout and Ohtani in the WBC, are more fans rooting for the Halos to win, or are they rooting for Ohtani to leave?
Well, if it's the casual fan, they're rooting for Ohtani to leave. They want to see him on another team because they're jealous. Everybody wants to see Ohtani on their team and play for them, which I understand. Who wouldn't want that?
Sure.
However, the commentary around it is ridiculous because, as I mentioned before, the reason why Ohtani is the way that he is now is because he had the opportunity to spread his wings and fly. I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly, right? And he got to do that with the Angels. And my question is, okay, so all the Dodger fans out there, are you going to treat him the same way you treated Yu Darvish after you ridiculed him off the team and onto the Padres for all those years? Like, are you going to treat Ohtani the minute he has an injury or the minute he has an issue? Are you going to treat him that way? The Mets or the Yankees, every time we go to the East Coast, it's, Ohtani can't play under the bright lights of New York because he had a bad start. Well, is that what it's going to be like when Ohtani goes there? You're not making a case for yourself at all to sign Shohei Ohtani. I don't care how much money you throw at him. And the problem with that is you still think money is the issue here with Ohtani.
Yeah.
Ohtani's going to make at least $500 million, probably anywhere that he goes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the Yankees or the Mets or any other team that can afford it. He's going to get the bag thrown at him, but that's not and never has been his biggest concern. He wouldn't have come over when he did if money was the issue. He came over so that he could be the player he knew that he could be deep down in his heart and to flex those hitting and pitching muscles that he has. So it's just so funny to me, the amount of people who seem to think that it's a given Ohtani is going to go to their team. I don't think it's a given he's going to stay with the Angels, to be fair, but at the same time, I think they have just as much of a chance as anybody else to do this and get him on their team. But you're not going to win him over by ridiculing him anytime that he comes to face you or anytime that he does something great and you try to downplay it. I mean, considering, like I said the other day, they gave Aaron Judge the MVP for breaking a 7th place record. And all the fans,
love that.
all the fans were all over that saying, well, Judge deserved it more than Ohtani.
Right.
Well, good luck signing him when he knows that's everything that you've said about him this past season.
He's listening. I guarantee you he's listening. And he seems to be the guy that falls in the Mike Trout category. Very humble, really honorable to the people around him. I loved when he was asked about the players that he watched growing up. When he was asked by Big Papi and A-Rod and also Pedro Martinez, he responded with, I watched Mr. A-Rod and Mr. Papi and Mr. Martinez. Like, he's got a lot of honor and a lot of respect. And so I know that it isn't a guarantee that he's going to re-sign with us, John, but there's a feeling in my gut that says that this is going to be a really good year for the Angels. But more importantly, I think that we're going to be pleasantly shocked when we find out that the Angels have signed him before he even reaches free agency. I think that there is something in the works. I know Artie said we haven't talked yet, but I think Perry is doing what Perry does. And then he's going to let Artie know, hey, by the way, I got this contract I'm going to need your signature on, because that's how I would do it. That's how I would run it, because I would make sure that we are doing everything on the up and up with his agent, because Shohei Ohtani needs to be on this team in the future.
Hey, coming up on Locked On Angels, there's 4 spots left on this roster for 2023. So who's going to step into those spots? Who's remaining? And what spots need to be filled? We'll talk about all of that coming up.
If you haven't downloaded the Ultimate Pro Baseball GM game yet, you should. It's a whole lot of fun, and they are sponsoring today's show. It's one of the greatest games that I've played in a really long time, and I'm discovering, John, as I play this game, that I'm actually not a great Major League general manager. It's not as easy as it is to talk about it, but you can do a whole lot of really great things with this game. You get to manage every strategic aspect of your franchise, play through the season, leading your franchise and fans to the glory as you build a historic dynasty, or in my case, as you need to fire your manager and get some new people to bring on some new players because I'm just not good at this game. But in the simulation, you're responsible for hiring the right coaches, and you're hiring the right staff, and you're managing the finances, you're scouting and drafting players, you're managing through difficult personalities and injuries, and you're navigating your franchise through free agency and all of the ups and downs of a major league season. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline, which means you can play on the go, you can play when and wherever you want to. And Locked On Angel listeners, get this. You get a 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store. You're going to want to use that. It's helpful for your team, gives you more points, all that good stuff. You'll figure it out when you get there. Download this game by visiting probaseballgm.com. You can scan the code if you're watching here on YouTube, right beneath my photo there. Or you can look it up in the App Store. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. We're going to continue our conversation about the Halos regarding the Angels roster, which is now sitting at 30, needs to get down to 26. They can also have a max of 13 pitchers, Mike. So that is also something to take into consideration. Who's going to stay and who's going to be cut? Well, on Friday, the Angels reassigned Ben Joyce along with Jordan Adams, Sam Bachman, Gerardo Reyes, Chad Wallach, Austin Warren. Everyone knows we like Austin Warren.
Yeah.
Jacob Webb and Ryan Aguilar. They also optioned Joe Adell, Mickey Moniak, and Andrew Velasquez. So that answers the fourth outfielder question that was all over Angels news and Twitter and Instagram last week. And so I had to address that a little bit in the mailbag last week while you were at Disneyland. So that was a big question on everyone's mind. It looks like for the time being, it's been answered. But it did give us some clarity about what the roster is going to look like. Now, there was a group of players that were non-roster invitees that also got released as well. But Sam Blum had a tweet that you were going to share with us. Why don't you share that about Brett Phillips?
Yeah, speaking about that fourth outfielder position, he said, I understand comparing Moniak and Phillips' spring numbers, but there's more to this. He gave 3 reasons. 1, Angels would have risked losing Phillips. He has defense and he has speed. 2, Angels' fourth outfielder will not start many games, and that's key. And it's why Joe Adell was sent down, but it's also why Mickey Moniak was sent down. You want him to actually have the reps that he needs. And then number 3, they're expecting Ward to play center field when Trout is out, and Rengifo, Drury, and Walsh can come in and play left field and right field. And so I actually think that this is a really good move. I did see a former, not a former Phillies fan, a Phillies fan who spoke about Mickey Moniak, who is a former Philly, and he actually shared the stats, John, of Moniak's spring training versus Moniak's regular season. And the numbers are drastic, like terribly drastic. And so I think that this move is a good move for him, and not risking a Phillips loss, I think, is really, really important. And my feeling on this, John, is quite simply, I think Phillips brings more than just defense and speed. I think he brings a personality that the Angels need right now. And something that I think that a lot of people want from Mike Trout, Brett Phillips will bring.
Okay.
Trout's always going to be Trout, and we're going to talk about that later this week. But Brett Phillips, I think, is kind of a straw that stirs the drink. I think he brings some energy to this group. I think he keeps them light. I think he keeps them laughing. But I also think that he can fire them up. I mean, a guy who can go in there and give up a home run to a left-handed hitting Anthony Rendon and then laugh about it later, which happened last year, I think is a guy that you want on your team, because he is somebody who seems to be really excited about being a ball player. And the Angels gave him a major league contract and nobody else did. And I think a part of his reward to this team is that he's going to play with a lot of fire and a lot of passion. And again, I think he's just a good clubhouse guy. And we've talked about this before on the pod, John, about how the Angels need like a Darren Erstad. They need somebody in that that clubhouse that can rally the troops and fire them up and be somebody who's vocal, kind of like what Shohei did in the WBC when he told his teammates, like, don't admire these guys. Let's play against these guys. If we admire them, we're not going to beat them. But if we play against them, we have an opportunity to beat them. So I actually think that this benefits the Angels more than just on the field. I think it benefits them in the clubhouse as well.
That's a good point. But then in the on the field respect, I mentioned it last week. You don't drop depth. You just got it. You just built it in the offseason. You signed this guy for a cheap deal. I know it was a major league deal, but it's still a cheap deal. It's not that much more than a minor league contract, right? Or the league minimum, essentially. And you don't drop depth because it's a long season. We've seen how injuries hurt us. We've seen how when guys go down and then there's a huge hole in that position that the Angels can't recover. And so you don't put yourself in a situation, even if you like Mickey Moniak and what he brings to the table, you don't put yourself in a position where a guy like that is going to only get 3 to 5 at-bats a week, maybe. He needs to be playing every single day. He's got to show that he can hit. He's got to show that he can play defense. And he did that in spring. And he's a spring training phenomenon. And like that Phillies fan said, this is what Phillies fans were used to with Mickey Moniak. And then, one thing or another, there was an injury. There was a hand injury at the beginning of last season, and then a hand injury at the end of last season with us. And so you want these guys to go out there and prove what they have. And the same thing goes for Joe Adell. You're not doing him any favors on the bench. So to me, these Angels are well equipped so that if Hunter Renfroe or Taylor Ward or Mike Trout has to take some time off, if they miss a week or two, then you have capable guys in Mickey Moniak and Joe Adell getting regular reps so they're not cold coming off the bench. I think that's super important to this team. I looked it up the other day, Mike, and the year that the Angels got to the playoffs, 2014, the most recent year, this is just the bullpen, but they used 27 guys.
Yeah, that was unreal when I saw that. Wasn't
that crazy?
Unbelievable, yeah.
So I tweeted that out because I was trying to make the case that don't worry about the bullpen. As concerning as it can feel, which I admit it does feel pretty concerning, don't worry about the bullpen because there's a lot of arms ready to step into the bullpen this season. But the same goes for position players. Don't worry about who we have right now because when the opportunity strikes, there are plenty of guys who can step up and take on that opportunity.
Yeah, so you mentioned at the top of the segment, there's 22 guys. We have a roster of 26 people, so we have to have 4 names that we need to get rid of because there's, I think, 30 total on the roster right now. And so here's the 22 spots, John. There's the 5 starting pitchers. Then there's 6, I think, guaranteed slots in the bullpen. Estevez, Herget, Loop, Moore, Quijada, and Tepera. Catcher might be interesting because Max Stassi has a bit of a hip issue.
And some personal issues he's been away for as well.
Yeah, so it might actually mean that Theis and O'Hoppe, we always thought O'Hoppe should start, but I wonder if this now means that Theis is a guaranteed person on this roster, although I think he's guaranteed no matter what. Then there's the 6 infielders, Drury, Fletch, Rendon, Rengifo, Urshela, and Walsh. And then, of course, the outfield is all of our big guys, Trout, Renfroe, Ward, Phillips. That 6th starter is still kind of up in the air, and we'll talk about this in the next segment. Phil Nevin said something about Tucker Davidson pitching well on Sunday night, and that actually could be indicative on if he becomes the 6th starter or not. But in competition for that is Griffin Canning, Jaime Barria, Tucker Davidson, and then Marte, C-Rod, and Wantz are still around. We know O'Hoppe and Theis are still around. Lamb's still in camp. So, Johnny, if you had to drop 4... if you had to actually fill those 4 spots, who are your 4 guys, taking into account that Stassi is hurt and taking into account that a couple of those guys, Theis especially and Barria, can't be optioned because they're out of options?
Yeah, Davidson to me is going to get that number 6 spot. I think Jaime Barria is going to be in the bullpen. I also think Andrew Wantz will be in there to start the season as well. And then I think O'Hoppe and Theis both come on this team, especially given the catcher situation. And because of Stassi's situation, maybe there's room for Jake Lamb. At the very least, you put Jake Lamb in AAA because he is incredible depth.
Yeah,
he's somebody that you want in AAA to come up. I compared him to a better Jack Mayfield. Because Jack Mayfield was great for us in 21 and was serviceable, but really wasn't as great in 22. But I think Jake Lamb, given his history with the Dodgers and the Mariners and the way that he's performed, I think that he's a very capable AAA guy that you call up the minute that you need another infielder.
I was looking at the roster from last year, just for kicks and giggles, and the last 4 on the roster, John, from last year: Tyler Wade, Matt Duffy, Jose Rojas, Jack
Woo!
Mayfield.
Oh, wow.
They wouldn't even sniff this roster this year,
No,
and I
not
don't
at
even know if
all.
they would even make it to AAA, John. Am I wrong there?
Well, and think about you had Mike Myers,
Oh,
Oliver
dear God.
Ortega, uh, I mean, Austin Warren, who actually is starting to look like his 2021 self. I
Yes.
think I
Yeah.
think getting hit in the face didn't help. I think Joe Madden making him walk Corey Seager took away all of his confidence in that Texas Rangers game. But yeah, so those 6 names right there, good grief, man. What a difference a year makes, and what a difference that depth makes as well.
Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. They're right in the middle of the Built Bar March Madness bracket, and you can vote on your favorite bar or your favorite puff. I'm going to be voting on the cookie dough chunk puff. That's my favorite. And when you vote for your favorite bar or your favorite puff, you can be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And not only that, one lucky Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built and have all of their favorite bars and puffs delivered to their door every day for 12 or every month for 12 months. You got to try Built. They're the best protein bar ever. And what makes them so good is they're like a candy bar, but they're actually really good for you. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, high in protein, low in sugar. You can go to builtmarchmadness.com right now and vote for your favorite bar or favorite puff. And while you're there, you can pick up a box of your favorite bars and your favorite puffs. And you can vote every day. March is ending soon, so you have just a couple of days to do this. And when you do, you can be subscribed and you can be locked in to possibly winning your favorite bar, favorite puff, or even getting a subscription for 12 months. So go to Built. Where am I? Go to builtmarchmadness.com right now. Vote for your favorite bar, favorite puff. And I think I need glasses. And hop on right now and support your favorite pick.
All right, we're getting into our last segment of the day, just recapping spring training, the last weekend of spring training. They played 2 in Arizona. They played 1 in LA, not very far from where I am in Pasadena.
Can you hear them?
I think I could hear all the Kershaw K's happening. Good grief.
Yeah,
man.
That was ridiculous.
Hey, so let me talk about Friday's game. And they played against the Padres on Friday. Blake Snell versus Griffin Canning. Of course, Blake Snell, a big lefty. And the Angels, didn't really get to him, but there wasn't much to speak of, but it was good to see some of those guys get hits off of Snell. But let me talk about Griffin Canning. 4 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 4 Ks, a 1.32 ERA during the spring. Mike, his velocity is up. His slider's looking good. I know that it's been kind of a tricky slider cutter, not really sure what to call it in the past, but Griffin Canning is looking to be in great shape and could easily get a spot start as the number 6 starter this season.
Let's talk about Saturday's game. And speaking of velocity, Sam Bachman started this game, and he looked really good. He was at 95 to 97 miles an hour, pitched 2 scoreless innings. He did work around 2 hits and 2 walks, and he did strike out 3 different people. And John, Sam hasn't allowed an earned run in 3 appearances this spring.
Attaboy.
And he was interviewed afterwards, talked about how excited he was to work out some things and maybe be an impact player for this roster at the end of the year. There's been some conversation about him coming up and maybe being one of those guys that shows up in the bullpen that's a fresh arm, especially if the Angels are competitive. And speaking of the bullpen, Phil Nevin was asked about the closer role and if Carlos Estevez would be that guy. And he said, I wouldn't say I have an exact closer yet. I think all of those things are going to play themselves out, work themselves out. He said, Carlos is definitely going to get some big outs late in the game most of the year for us. So John, does this indicate maybe closer by committee, you think?
You and I have talked about going with the hot hand in the past, and I think that seems to be an indication that that's what Phil Nevin wants to do as well. I'm somebody who likes bullpen roles because I think you go out there with a clear idea of what your goal is, what
you're
meant
an old school
to do.
baseball guy, Johnny. How
That's
about that?
right, deep down. But Mike, also on that subject, I think you got to give these guys clean innings because I was concerned about what Phil Nevin said until I remembered last season. It wasn't so much that Joe Madden didn't have clearly defined roles for guys, and obviously Raisel Iglesias was the closer to start the season. It was more that oh, now you're bringing in Ryan Tepera in the middle of the 8th with
Yes.
2 on and 1 out, you know, and it was like, can we just give these guys a clean inning, or can we just give the guy on the mound a chance to clean up his own mess and get that last out? Because that's really all he has to do, is get one guy to pop up, one guy to ground out. And so I really feel like Phil Nevin's comments concerned me at first, but if he gives his guys and affords them the opportunity to have clean innings, to pitch a clean inning, then I think we'll be in better shape. But yes, a closer by committee, going with a hot hand. Maybe it's Herget one day, maybe it's Matt Joyce another day, maybe it's Ryan Tepera another day. But I really think that you're going to see a lot of Herget in the 8th and Carlos Estevez in the 9th, and you'll start to see kind of a pattern emerge out of that.
Sunday night's game, we didn't look very good. 3-0 loss to the Dodgers, although we were going up against Clayton Kershaw. And
2013, 2014 Kershaw out there.
He looks fantastic. And you're right about the strikeouts. We looked like the strikeout team from last year. Now, all the starters didn't play the entire game. They began to remove them after a bit. I think this lineup, John, might be one that is similar to what we'll see on opening day outside of Jeremiah Jackson playing third. I think obviously Rendon is going to play there. He was out because his daughter broke her arm, and so he was tending to that. He is not hurt, so let's just say that out loud to everybody who's been freaking out. Rendon is not hurt. His daughter got hurt, and so he was being a good dad. Nevin did say, I mentioned this earlier, that this start with Davidson would be an indicator on if he would be the 6th starter. I don't know, John. I'm kind of leaning in the direction of, I wonder if Davidson should be in the bullpen and Jaime Barria should be that 6th starter, because I wonder if giving him an opportunity to really prove what he can do. He hasn't really had an opportunity to start since 2019. I think he went 10-9 that year. And actually there was a lot of hope about that guy. And then COVID hit and everything kind of fell apart. He's been our long reliever and he's looked good in that role, but I think he wants to have more of an impactful role. And so if I'm choosing between Barria and Davidson, I think I'm putting Davidson in the bullpen to start, and I'm going to have Jaime be that 6th starter. 1, just because I'd love to see what he can do, but 2, he's a right-hander, and we are really left-handed heavy. Would you still go with Davidson as your 6th starter?
I don't want to give anybody a 6th starter spot.
Gotcha.
I think that there's enough options here to say, like, who should we go with? Hey,
who's the hot hand? Okay.
This date's coming up on the calendar. Who should we go with? What's this lineup look like? Do we want a lefty out there? Do we want a righty out there? Because, Mike, I know Davidson gave up 2 earned runs. He gave up 2 bombs. One was to Chris Taylor. That was a definite bomb.
Yeah.
And then I think the other one was Max Muncy.
Yes.
That was a little wind carried. And trust me, it was windy yesterday in Los Angeles. So, but the fact that he went 4 1/3 against this Dodgers lineup that was pretty much the Dodgers lineup, kind of compared to how this lineup was almost the Angels lineup, I can't complain about the fact that he got through to the 5th inning. And then, they wanted to give Barria a chance. So Andrew Wentz came in and helped Tucker Davidson, and then Barria came in after that. But again, I don't think that you need to say this guy is your number 6 starter. I think you roll with the hot hand. I think you roll with the guy that's necessary in that moment. And that gives Griffin Canning a chance as well. So it really comes down to, what does the opponent's lineup look like? Who do you want to roll out there on a 6th day that you need? And again, it's about 16, 17 starts for these guys who are going to be that number 6 starter. I just don't think it's like one person's role this season. What are your thoughts?
Interesting for somebody who just said, I like to have roles, but but I get what you're saying. I think that having the hot hand here there, and also being able to give people an opportunity, Griffin Canning especially coming up, and maybe he matches up against this team better than Davidson or Barria matches up. I don't
see why you would pigeonhole yourself into, like, you're the guy, this is your spot, when you've got a top 5 rotation that, I should say, well, maybe a top 5 rotation. You've got a 1 through 5 rotation that's pretty locked in and ready to go. And so if you only need that guy occasionally, then play the hot hand. You have options. There's nothing wrong with having options. I only like butter on my rolls. So that's how I'm going to end that one.
That was good. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast. Matt and Dom are here to help you with all of your fantasy baseball strategies, and you can find their podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, and they're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, thanks for being here with us for today's episode. If you want to reach out to the show, you can do so at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're watching on YouTube, comment below. It really helps out the channel. A lot of great interaction last week, so please do that. Get into our comments. Hey, Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
We're going to ask this question. How have the new rules affected the game this spring? We saw Kershaw last night have 2 pitching violations, and then you heard the crowd. The crowd was not thrilled with that at all. And there's been some discussion about that 8-second being ready as a batter facing the pitcher. All of that is really impacting the game in a significant way. So we're going to talk about how it has this spring tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Ohtani's hit off Kershaw was an easy out last year. So I expect Ohtani to get like a 50-point boost in his batting average this season. All right, friends, we hope you'll come back and join us for that episode. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.